In a hall filled with silence, the kind that carries both sorrow and reverence, Dylan H. Oakes stood before the congregation, his voice steady but his eyes carrying the weight of history. It was not just a farewell, it was the closing of a remarkable chapter in the life of the church. President Russell M. Nelson, the beloved prophet, teacher, and leader, had departed this world, leaving behind a legacy that will echo through generations. And now, his successor, Dylan H. Oakes, stood to honor him with words that were more than a tribute. They were a reflection of a lifetime of faith, service, and devotion. Oakes began by acknowledging the profound sense of loss felt by millions across the world. "Today we gather not only as mourners," he said softly, "but as witnesses of a life lived with courage, humility, and unwavering love for the Savior." His words resonated in the room, reaching the hearts of every listener who had, in one way or another, been touched by President Nelson's example. He recounted the early days of Nelson's service, not merely as a prophet, but as a man who had always carried compassion within him. A world-renowned heart surgeon before his calling as a prophet, President Nelson literally gave life to thousands through his hands. Oakes reminded the congregation of the deep symbolism in that fact. Even before he guided souls spiritually, he mended lives physically. His hands became instruments of both healing and teaching, reminding us of the Savior's own ministry. As the address continued, Oakes turned toward the spiritual legacy President Nelson left behind. He spoke of his fearless leadership in turbulent times, the clarity with which Nelson had addressed the world, the emphasis he placed on personal revelation, and the constant reminder that Jesus Christ must remain at the very center of every disciple's life. President Nelson never spoke to fill a pulpit, Oakes declared. He spoke to lift burdens, to ignite faith, and to call us closer to Christ. For a moment, Oakes paused, visibly moved. The congregation held its breath, and in that silence, the presence of loss became palpable. Then, with renewed strength, Oakes pressed on. "I stand here not only as his successor, but as one who had the privilege to walk beside him. I saw how he lived behind closed doors, where there were no cameras, no microphones, no crowds, only family, faith, and love. And I can testify he was the same man in private that he was in public. His devotion never wavered." He described President Nelson as a leader who taught not only by sermons but by example. He recalled countless instances where Nelson greeted strangers with the warmth of an old friend, where he chose kindness over convenience, and where he spoke words that changed lives forever. President Nelson reminded us, Oakes reflected, that discipleship is not about perfection, it is about direction, and he always walked firmly in the direction of Christ. As the farewell address deepened, Oakes wove in the voices of millions who grieved across continents. Messages poured in from every corner of the world, from African villages to bustling European cities, from the Americas to Asia. Each message carried the same theme: gratitude. Gratitude for a man who showed them that faith is not outdated, that hope is not naive, and that love is not optional. "If President Nelson taught us anything," Oakes said firmly, "it is that love, Christ-like love, is the greatest power we can ever wield." The successor also highlighted the courage Nelson had during moments of global uncertainty. From pandemics to wars, from cultural upheaval to societal division, President Nelson offered steady guidance. He called for peace, for unity, for patience. His invitation to hear him, to listen directly to the voice of the Savior, became a rallying cry for millions struggling with confusion and despair. Oakes emphasized that this was not just leadership, it was prophecy. When the world was shaken, President Nelson reminded us of the rock of our Redeemer. Then came the most personal part of the address. Oakes shared his own feelings of stepping into the role Nelson had left behind. To follow such a man is not only daunting, it is humbling beyond words. I feel his presence still, not as a shadow, but as a guiding light. And I promise you, as I promised him, that the work will go on, not in my strength, but in the Lord's." The emotion in his voice revealed both the burden and the honor he carried. He spoke of Nelson's final days, not with detail that would intrude on sacred family moments, but with reverence for the peace that accompanied him. "Even as his body grew weaker, his spirit grew brighter," Oakes said. "He faced mortality the way he faced life, with grace, with courage, and with an unshakable testimony of the Savior Jesus Christ. In his last breaths, there was no fear, only faith." As the address neared its close, Oakes invited everyone present, and those watching across the globe, to honor President Nelson not merely with words, but with action. "If we truly wish to honor him," Oakes said solemnly, "let us live as he taught. Let us make the Sabbath a delight. Let us seek revelation in our homes. Let us minister with love. Let us forgive. Let us serve. Let us trust the Lord. This is how his legacy will endure." Finally, with his voice firm but tender, Oakes delivered a farewell that seemed to resonate beyond the walls of the hall. "President Nelson, our beloved prophet, teacher, and friend, we release you with gratitude, with tears, and with hope. You have fought a good fight. You have finished your course. You have kept the faith. And though we will miss your voice on this side of the veil, we know heaven now rings with your joy." Oakes also reminded the congregation that President Nelson's legacy was not confined to the pulpit, but stretched into homes, hospitals, classrooms, and hearts. He was never content with half efforts, Oakes reflected. Whether in his professional career or in his prophetic ministry, he gave everything with exactness and with love. That devotion leaves a roadmap for us all. How to live with integrity, how to love without condition, and how to serve without seeking recognition. His voice carried both admiration and a challenge, a call for the church to rise to the same standard. He then spoke about President Nelson's deep respect for the rising generation. "Our beloved prophet always believed in the power of the youth," Oakes said. "He trusted them with responsibilities, encouraged them to stand tall in faith, and gave them courage to believe that their discipleship mattered." In this, Nelson left behind not just teachings, but a generation inspired to lead with conviction and courage. For Oakes, this was proof that Nelson's influence was not ending, but multiplying through the lives of those he touched. The congregation rose, tears streaming freely. It was not just a farewell, it was a covenant to carry forward the torch that President Nelson had lit. Dylan H. Oakes had not only delivered a heartfelt tribute, he had given voice to millions who loved, admired, and followed President Nelson. And as the organ swelled with hymns of faith, a new chapter began, not in forgetting the past, but in building upon it. Oakes's words lingered in the air long after the service ended. "The work is the Lord's. The servant may depart, but the shepherd remains."